Life is unpredictable, my whole world is crushing down before me and I don't know what to do. Everything still feels like a dream. I wish I never went to the club on that fateful day. I've never been the type to go clubbing in the first place. A single night out with my friends is about to ruin my life. I messed up big time and I can only hope that things don't end up getting worse than it already is. I'm in a state of fiasco right now. I can't believe I cheated on my fiancé with a total stranger. How do I come out of this? A night of fun is about to cause me my whole world. My name is Nadia and I'm a 26-year-old TV presenter. I live in a small town called Madison in Georgia. I'm engaged to my fiancé, his name is George. He is an architect. George and I have been engaged for 2 years and our wedding is in 2 weeks. I met George 5 years ago when I went to New York for an audition. It was love at first sight. Ever since then we have been inseparable. George is the absolute love of my life. He has all the qualities I ever wanted in a man. He is every woman's dream. The more I think about it, the more I blame myself for everything. I don't think George will ever forgive me for cheating on him 2 weeks before our wedding. I hate myself for doing this to him. He doesn't deserve this. George and I promised each other we would be celibate until our wedding night, and now I have ruined everything. I don't think I will be able to look him in the face and tell him the truth. I don't know how he's going to react. He might even break off the engagement and cancel the wedding. That will be disastrous. How will I be able to confess to George that I slept with a total stranger at a club? I wish I never followed my friends to the club that night. I can still remember everything that happened that night. My friends organized a party for me at a club and invited me. Initially, I wanted to decline the invitation, but I decided to go after I saw how much effort they had put into planning the party. The party was going smoothly until I decided to have a drink. That was the beginning of my nightmare. While we were dancing and having fun, a tall handsome man approached me and requested I dance with him. I was reluctant at first, but my friends encouraged me. According to them I should loosen up and have fun because after marriage I wouldn't have such freedom anymore. I wish I never listened to them, but I did. The man introduced himself as Jaden. Our conversation began from there. I enjoyed his company because he made me laugh so hard. I don't think I have laughed so hard like that in a long time. Don't get me wrong, I love my fiancé George, but sometimes he can be too serious. Jaden and I continued our conversation. The conversation was going so smoothly that I didn't want it to end. That was the only thing I can remember. The next day I woke up to see myself in a strange place, on a strange bed and with a complete stranger. I was so devastated, and was in denial for the first 5 minutes. I needed time to process everything. I could not bring myself to accept the fact that I jumped in bed with a stranger I just met less than 24 hours ago. It didn't make sense. I've been celibate ever since I met George 5 years ago. How then did I let my guard down to sleep with a stranger I met a few hours ago? George doesn't know what has happened yet. He has been out of town for work and will be back tomorrow. I don't know what to do now. Should I confess everything to George or I should keep this secret with me forever? My wedding is coming up in a few weeks and I don't know what might happen if I confess to George the first cheated on him. I don't want to lose George. I love him so much that the thought of him breaking up our engagement and calling off the wedding is killing me. I don't think I can survive without George in my life. What should I do, guys? Should I confess to George or pretend like nothing happened? Update. Hi guys, it's me again. I didn't confess to George, at least not yet. I decided to bury the truth with me forever. I can't risk losing George. I can't even imagine my life without George. I decided to move on like nothing happened. Everything was going fine until Jaden contacted me. I didn't pick the call because I didn't have his contact on my phone. I gave him my contact at the party I guessed. After several calls, I decided to pick the call and he introduced himself. I immediately ended the call, so he sent me a text. He said he has been looking for me and that he has something for me. I can't even believe the fool still had the audacity to contact me after everything. Even though I have a part to play in everything that happened, I'm sure he took advantage of me because I was tipsy. I blocked his line immediately and continued with my day. I regret going to the club that day. If I had stayed at home that day, I never would have met Jaden. What happened could have been averted. But it is too late to apportion blame now. I just had to concentrate on what was important, which was my upcoming wedding with George. Everything was going as planned until 2 weeks later. I noticed my engagement ring was missing. That was the beginning of another problem for me. I was dressed ready to meet George for our wedding rehearsal when I noticed I could no longer find my engagement ring. There is no way I will meet with George and he will not notice my engagement ring is missing. I have never removed my engagement ring ever since George proposed to me 2 years ago. There is no way I'm going to miss my own wedding rehearsal, but I can't go there without my engagement ring. I turned my entire house upside down looking for the ring, yet I couldn't find it. George was calling on the phone, everyone was worried. After searching my house and not finding the ring, I knew where I might have left it. Your guess is as good as mine. I forgot the ring at Jaden's place. I unblocked him and called him immediately. He told me he's been expecting my call that he is with my ring and I should come to his house and get it. I asked him if we could meet in an open place, but he insisted we meet in his house. I didn't have an option. I wanted my ring back, so I went to his house. I slept with Jaden again, guys. Don't judge me, please. There's something about Jaden that is irresistible. Jaden and I made out for the second time. This time I was not tipsy and it was 2 days to my wedding. I couldn't believe what had happened. Everything happened so fast. There's this undeniable sensation between Jaden and I. I took my engagement ring from Jaden and I warned him never to contact me again, that I was getting married in 2 days. Jaden fell on his knees and started begging. He asked me to give us a chance and I told him there is no us to begin with. He locked the door and blocked me from stepping out and I threatened to shout. He got scared and moved out the way. I was already late for my wedding rehearsal. Everyone was worried sick because they could not reach me. My phone battery died on my way to Jaden's place. By the time I arrived at the venue for the wedding rehearsal it was already late, most people had gone. I only met George and some of his friends around. George was angry, but he took me aside to inquire what happened. I didn't know what to say, so I lied. I told him my grandma met with an accident and I took her to the hospital. That calmed him down a little. He asked we go see her after the rehearsal, but I told him there was no need because it was a minor accident. She is fine and recovering at home. All through the rehearsals George kept staring at me, like he knew I was trying to hide something from him. He kept asking me if I was okay, all through the rehearsals. He suggested we postpone the rehearsals since I was not in the right frame of mind, but I insisted we continue. If there's one thing I know, it is the fact that I don't have enough time. The more I looked at George, the more I felt guilty. How do I explain to him I cheated on him twice with a stranger? A stranger I don't even know anything about. I don't even know his surname. George kept trying to cheer me up all through the rehearsals. He thought my grandma's accident ruined my mood, so he tried everything within his power to cheer me up. I had to play along because I knew George is very smart. The more he tried to cheer me up, the more sad I became. He doesn't deserve this, not from me, not from anyone. I hate myself right now. I can't believe I made the same mistake twice. The rehearsals were over and George drove me home. The ride home was longer than usual. I don't know if it was the silence in the car or the cold. Whatever it is, I know I might get caught soon if I don't do something. George dropped me at home without saying a word, which was unlike him. He didn't even respond when I asked him if we would be seeing each other the following day. He just drove off without saying anything. I think he is beginning to suspect me. I know I can't fool him for long. Should I confess to him I cheated on him twice with a stranger I met at a club? What if he ends our relationship and never forgives me? I can't allow that to happen. I will do everything possible to make sure George doesn't find out about my affairs. The following day I got a message from George asking me to meet him at our favorite coffee shop. I was so scared because I didn't know why he wanted to see me 24 hours before our wedding. So many thoughts were flying through my mind. I wanted to ask the reason for the sudden meetup, but I know he would suspect something fishy if I did that. I was nervous, you could tell by just looking at me. I decided to face my fears and confront my demons once and for all. I got up, dressed up, and headed for the coffee shop. My legs were shaking. I thought they would break before I got to George. I was so lost in thought that I didn't know when we arrived at the coffee shop, the taxi driver had to tap me for me to come back to my senses. I got down and I could see George was already there waiting for me, which made me more anxious. We were supposed to meet by 9 o'clock and George was already seated there by 8 o'clock. I arrived earlier than scheduled because I wanted to calm myself down before the meeting. All of a sudden, fear gripped me and I didn't want to step an inch inside anymore because it was obvious George already knows the truth and he is about to call off the engagement and cancel the wedding. It took the last strength in me for me to finally step inside. I guess you never know how strong you are until being strong is the only option you have. Well, can you guys guess what happened next? Sorry to burst your bubble, guys, George didn't invite me over to break off the engagement, at least not yet. But I wish I never went in the first place because nothing prepared me for what happened next. After I arrived at the coffee shop, I met with George and he apologized for the way he behaved with me the day before. He told me he was mad. I showed up 5 hours late to our wedding rehearsals and that was why he ignored me. He apologized for being insensitive and asked me to forgive him. Guys, I died. How could he ask me to forgive him when I'm the one who should be asking for his forgiveness? How would he react when he finds out my grandma was never sick and that I was making out with a stranger? That was why I came late to our wedding rehearsal. I felt bad and hated myself even more. At that moment, I wanted to confess everything to him, but I could not. I can't risk losing him forever, so I said I have accepted his apology and I also apologized for not informing him about my grandma's alleged accident on time. One dangerous thing about telling a lie is, you need a lie to cover a lie. Once you start telling lies, there's no going back. I never knew a day would come when I would keep anything from my best friend. We always told each other everything. I know everything about George, even the little things. I know of his favorite shaving stick even down to his favorite hairbrush. We tell each other everything. We gist about how our day went every night before bed. George always calls me to tell me good night every day since we met 5 years ago. He has been consistent that I wonder how he makes out time from his busy schedule. George makes sure we talk at least 3 times daily. George was always out of town because of the nature of his job and that's why he made sure we communicated at least 3 times daily. The reason our relationship survived my challenges was because of communication. We communicated our feelings to each other. That's why it hurts me that I can't discuss my cheating with him. That would mean losing him forever. George is soft-hearted but he is also a principled man. I've witnessed a situation where he sacked his cook because he lied to him about the cost of groceries. I knew he would never forgive me if he found out I cheated on him with a complete stranger. The worst aspect is that I was the one that suggested we stay celibate until our wedding night. We made a promise to stay faithful to each till we say I do. George will never forgive me, that I'm sure of. He will think I tricked him. George has been faithful to me ever since we started dating. He was a bad boy, well not really, but he has the look. Ladies always flocked around him, but all that changed when we started dating. He blocked all of them when he saw how uncomfortable I was. He can do anything just to put a smile on my face, but here I was hiding a very big secret from him. I was playing how everything can go wrong in my head. When George interrupted me, he held my hands and asked me if there's anything I should tell him. I was confused. I pretended to be lost and asked him what he meant by that. He told me we are about to get married and we should start our new chapter on a clean slate, that if there's anything I want to tell him I shouldn't hesitate. That was my chance, guys, my chance to confess everything and finally be free from the guilt that is ruining what ought to be the best time of my life. But I was too scared to come clean. I told him there's nothing of sort, that I have always been open to him ever since we started dating. There I was telling more lies. I threw the question back to him and he said yes, he has something he wanted to confess to me and that I should swear I will forgive him. Guys, in that moment I had some comfort. I could breathe again. I thought he was about to confess he cheated on him, not that I will be happy he cheated, but at least we will be even. I asked him to go ahead and promise to forgive him. He told me there was a time he lied to me about being at home, but the truth is, he was out with some of his friends, so I should please forgive him. I was disappointed. Everything was written all over my face. At that moment I wished he cheated on me so we will be even, but that's not the case. I can't believe he will apologize for telling lies. I mean, everybody lies, maybe not everybody, but why is he even apologizing for that? Why now? He is trying to make me feel guilty. Is there a puzzle I'm missing? Does he know something? All these were the questions flying in my head, but I could not voice them out. I told him I had forgiven him and we hugged. He brought out a customized diamond necklace and gave it to me. He told me he couldn't wait for us to finally get married tomorrow. George love language, he loves giving me expensive things. Everything was going smoothly until my worst nightmare finally happened. While George was helping me wear the necklace, I decided to look in the mirror and see how the necklace looked on me, and couldn't believe my eyes. Is that not Jaden I'm seeing sitting on the next table to ours? I was shocked. He was smiling at me, so I quickly dropped the mirror and face front. I told George the first was no longer comfortable in that coffee shop and that we should go to another place. He was surprised because that was our favorite spot. He asked me to exercise a little patience so he could finish his hot dog and coffee. But he stopped eating when he saw how uncomfortable I was. He asked me to give him a minute so he could rush to the restroom so we could go. Immediately he stepped out to go use the restroom. Jaden left his table and came to where I was staying. I was too scared to remember anything he was saying. I kept asking him to leave, but he refused. While we were at it, George arrived and asked why Jaden was in his seat. I have to come up with an excuse to save the day. I told George, Jaden was my schoolmate and he only came to say hi to me. I introduced George to Jaden as my fiancé. Jaden got the message and left immediately. George was not convinced by that lie, he is too smart to buy that kind of lie. We left the coffee shop and headed home. Before dropping me at home, George held my hands again and looked into my eyes, this time more serious. He asked me if I'm keeping anything away from him and I told him no. He dropped me off at the house and wanted to come say hello, but I refused because he might discover I lied about my grandma having an accident. How long can I keep up with the lies though? Anyways, I'm getting married in 10 hours time. I will worry about the consequences of my actions later. I just wanted to live in the present. But one thing I was sure of is that George is beginning to suspect me. Update. It is finally my wedding day, guys. Yes, my wedding day. The day that was supposed to be the happiest day of my life turned out to be the worst day of my entire life. The day I always fantasized about got ruined. I don't even know where to start from. So I got up that morning excited that I was about to tie the knot, not knowing I was about to be humiliated. I didn't know I was about to be mocked by my enemies. Everything happened so fast, it felt like a dream. I woke up that day earlier than usual. I was excited, so you could tell by just looking at me. I was so happy to finally be getting married. I couldn't wait for the wedding ceremony to be over, so George and I would start our journey together. I hurriedly took my bath and my makeup artist started putting makeup on my face. George called me on the phone and asked if I was prepared, and I told him yes, I'm fully prepared to get married. He sounded weird, but I was too excited to bother myself about that. I mean, what could go wrong again? George and I will be getting married in 2 hours. Nothing can go wrong in just a short time, so I thought, but I was wrong. Everything could go wrong in a twinkle of an eye. Your entire life can change in just a moment. That's what happened to me. After my phone call with George, the first was even more excited than I was before. George told me on the phone he had a surprise for me. I was so eager to get married, I almost told my makeup to stop the makeup. I was eager to get married. I asked my makeup artist to hurry so we will be done on time because I will not be going late to my own wedding. Everything was going so smoothly, I almost forgot that I cheated on George. George called me back. He said he wanted to check if everything was in order. I told him everything was perfect. I mean, we hired the best wedding planner in town. He asked me if I have ever done something stupid before. The question was strange. I told him no, and he was quiet for some time. I asked if he was having a second thought about us getting married or if he was getting cold feet. He assured me everything was fine and that he was only teasing me. I wish I had read the sign. He asked me if I was nervous and I told him no. How can I be nervous when I'm about to get married to my best friend? If anything, I was excited because I knew I made the right choice. I picked the perfect man to be the father of my unborn kids. But deep down I was worried. I wanted to know why George sounded off on the phone. The more I thought about it, the more restless I became. I can't afford to lose George, the thought alone makes my heart arch. I finally left for church, guys. On my way to church, George kept calling. He said he wanted to make sure I arrived safely. I asked where was and he told me he was already at the church. He told me he couldn't wait to see me. I became a little relaxed after the call, but I was still anxious. I wanted everything to be over so I could breathe. I got to the church and got the biggest surprise of my life. I know you guys are eager to know what happened next. Well, here we go. George never showed up to our wedding. George dished me on the altar. Everything happened so fast it still feels like a dream. What I have feared the most has happened to me. George did not just cancel the wedding, he made sure he gave me a public embarrassment. How do I face everyone and tell them the wedding has been canceled? At that moment it felt like I had lost everything. At first I thought he was stuck up in traffic or something happened to him on his way to our wedding. I decided to try his line, but he refused to pick up. I was even more worried because we spoke few minutes ago and he assured me he was already at the venue. The priest that was supposed to officiate our wedding was surprised to see me. Apparently George had called the priest to inform him that the wedding was cancelled. I couldn't believe my ears. If not that he was a priest, I would have called him a pretty liar. All the guests were present except for George's family and friends, which was shocking. I couldn't even look at my dad. I could tell he was disappointed. If there's one person that was genuinely happy that I was getting married, it was my dad. We have always planned this ever since I was a child. He always dreamt about walking me down the aisle. I could tell he was not happy. I felt bad for my dad. His dream of walking his only child down the aisle was cut short. Everyone felt sorry for me. I felt bad for them too. I blamed myself for wasting everybody's time. I continued calling George till he finally picked up. I asked his whereabouts and he warned me to stop calling him. I was shocked because he has never spoken to me in that manner before. He asked if I liked my surprise. It was then I realized he had planned everything. He told me he is aware of everything and that he can't get married to cheat like me and that he regretted the day he ever set eyes on me. He told me there would be no wedding. He called me so many unprinted names. I begged him to come back for us to at least get married and after the wedding we can fix everything. He can even cheat back if that is what he wants and we'll be even. I begged him, but he refused to listen. He told me things don't work that way. He told me he knows everything I have done so far, how I got in bed with a total stranger I met at a club and how I have been telling more lies to cover up. How I went to visit him on the night of our wedding rehearsals and still slept with him again. He told me I should get lost and never contact him again. He told me he was going to ruin my life and that dishing me on our wedding day was just one out many to come. Everything felt like a dream and I had to pinch myself to make sure I was not dreaming. My worst fears finally came to pass, guys. George didn't not just break off the engagement, he never showed at the altar. The humiliation was too much. Everyone present looked at me with pity and tried to console me. I bet they would hate me if they finally found out the truth of what happened. I knew my life was ruined forever. It was foolish of me to think I could get away with cheating. What was I thinking in the first place? I ran out of the church as fast as my legs could carry me and headed straight to George Place. I was denied entrance by the security. I had to go back home. I tried calling George several times, but he never picked up my calls. It was later in the day the reality of everything that had happened hit me. I cried so much it felt like my eyes would pop out. I can't believe I ruined my own life. I have lost George, my best friend, forever. The following day, the news was all over town. My cancelled wedding had become a hot gossip in the town. One thing I was thankful for was the fact that no one knew why George never showed up at our wedding yet. My life will be ruined if people get to know the reason my wedding never happened. George showed up at my house the next day and asked that I return everything he had ever bought for me, from the phone down to the smallest thing like a hairpin. He took it all. I decided to use the opportunity and apologize, but he refused to listen. I wanted to tell him what happened, but he paid deaf ears to everything I was saying. He took everything from me and gave them to my stepmom and half-sister. I was surprised because George and my stepmom had never gotten along. If for anything he hated my stepmom because of how my stepmom treats me, so why is he giving them everything he seized from me? Nothing made sense anymore. Apparently, it was my stepmom and half-sister that exposed everything to George. They overheard me when I was discussing everything that happened with my friend. They recorded it and sent it to George. I don't even blame them, I blame myself. If I had not gone to the club that night, everything that happened would have been avoided and I would be married to George by now. It's too late to feel sorry for myself now, so I decided to go see George one more time to apologize. This time he allowed me in. Nothing prepared me for the surprise that was waiting for me. I came into the house and met George and his ex-girlfriend. For a moment I thought we were still together and I flared up, but he called me to order. He told me I didn't have the right to question him as we are more together. That I lost that right the day I slept with a stranger and lied to him about it. I was hurt but I remained calm. The interesting part is that they're married. Yes, married. Apparently while I was walking down the aisle waiting for George, he decided to wed his ex-girlfriend the same day. The shock was too much for me, that I fainted. I woke up to see myself at the hospital. I thought I would see George by my side but he was nowhere to be found. He didn't even bring me to the hospital. He asked the security to take me to the hospital and he called my dad to inform him I fainted. He never showed up till I was discharged from the hospital. If someone had told me this would happen to me, I would have bet with everything I have that it was not possible. I thought things like this happened in movies. Now my life is like a movie. I never in a million years thought I would cheat on my fiancé with a complete stranger and he would get revenge by leaving me at the altar and getting married to his ex-girlfriend the same day. I doubt I will ever recover from this. I know I was wrong to have cheated on George, but I didn't deserve the public humiliation he gave me. He has practically ruined my life. How do I face the world again? I have lost my self-confidence. Update. Hi guys, I'm back again. Life has been tough. I never imagined my life would turn out this way. I still blame myself every day for cheating on George. I still wish I never went to the club that night. I wish I had declined my friend's invitation to the party. I'm trying to pick up my life again. Slowly everyone seems to be forgetting everything that happened but not me. Everything is still fresh in my heart. I have continued to blame myself. There's no day I don't cry myself to sleep. Crying has become my favorite thing to do. I would be married to George right now if I had not gone to that party. I decided to move, but it wasn't easy. The more I tried, the harder it became. Madison, Georgia is a small town and news travels fast like wildfire. I couldn't even step out of the house because anyway I went, there were 2 or 3 people gossiping about me. They made the gossip so loud I could hear them. As if the news of my wedding being cancelled was not enough, my stepmom and half-sister decided to spread the news of me sleeping with a stranger a few weeks before my wedding. It got so bad I couldn't even step out of my room. While people were gossiping about me outside, my stepmom and half-sister were on a roll call at home. They took turns to taunt me. I finally decided to relocate from Madison, Georgia and go start life all over again, a place where no one knew me, and that was the best decision I made. I left Madison, Georgia and I moved to Paris. I just wanted to breathe some fresh air. Life in Paris was not easy. It was hard for me to adapt to life there. I grew up in a small town. All my life I was used to a simple life, so it was hard for me to get used to the fast life Paris threw at me. I'm happy I finally summoned the courage to leave my comfort zone. Slowly, I started getting used to life in Paris and I started settling in. I got a house and furnished it to my taste, and I also landed a job at a multi-million company in Paris. Everything seemed to be going well, but I was still not happy. I still felt incomplete. Don't get me wrong, George was my best friend for 5 years, but it was as if I had known him my entire life. That is why it was hard for me to pick up my life again. My life seems to be meaningless without. As time passed, I started smiling again. I started gaining my confidence back. A breakoff shouldn't be the end of the world for me. I still regret everything that happened, but I don't feel bad anymore. It took a lot of therapy sessions for me to be in this present state of mind. Initially, I was reluctant about going for therapy. I thought it was a complete waste of time, but now I'm happy I did. I'm no longer a damaged person, at least not 100%. I can see a lot of improvement in myself. There was no point wishing on what could have been or feeling sorry for myself. I finally accepted that there was no way George and I would get back together. George is married to his ex-girlfriend now. George didn't leave room for reconciliation, that was why he quickly got married to his ex-girlfriend. I had to stop dreaming about us ever coming back together and just face my life. It took lots of work and therapy sessions for me to come out of what happened. I had to make a conscious effort to forget about George, I had to stop waiting for his calls, I had to stop stalking him on social media, and I had to block him for my own sanity. I deleted all the pictures we took together and got rid of everything that reminded me of him. Most importantly, I stopped feeling sorry for myself. I told myself what had happened, and there was nothing I could do about that. That's my story, guys. I hope everyone learns from it. You can't eat your cake and have it. I hope everyone learns a thing or two from my story. Even though I have forgiven myself for everything that happened, I can't seem to forget. I know time will heal everything. Thanks and good. I would never forget the day my life went downhill within a blink of an eye. I thought I was having fun and exploring what I had not done before. All I wanted was to experience and venture into new things that my husband was not offering. You know, sometimes it's really bad to get married when your heart still wants to explore other things. It's like getting married when you are not even ready for commitment. My husband was very boring and always busy with work to a point that he didn't even try to make time for me. As his wife, it would always be either his work or gone to business trips that take months for him to come back. So I am young and still beautiful, so I thought, why not try what I had been missing out ever since I got married? Well, my work history is not too good, so some might know what I mean when I say some old habits die hard. If I knew better, I would have done things a different way, or I wouldn't have done anything that would jeopardize my marriage and my image. How does one deal with the most cruel and humiliating act that my husband had taken because I had done him wrong? How do I recover from this? Let me take you to what happened. Please do not judge me but advise me. So I, female, 33, and my husband Dominic, a male, 40, met at a cafe that I was working at in LA, while I was also working at a strip club during weekends and holidays. That time I was only 22, going to be turning 23 in a couple of months to come. He had come for some business meeting, if I was not mistaken, because he once told me that when we met, he was still trying to grow his architectural business since he had worked as a building planner and designer. The day we met, it wasn't a very pleasant day for me because I was not working at a cafe because I liked to. But it was the circumstances that I was facing at home. You know, since I was the only girl child who got a chance to further her studies. I was raised by a single mother who is also dealing with her own drinking problems, so I had to become an adult to her and my younger siblings. I worked at a cafe to raise more funds to pay for my tuition fees and make amends to take care of my younger siblings. So I didn't get a chance to enjoy my youth and do what my age mates did. One day he asked for my numbers, telling me that he loved my service, so he would like to get my work schedule so he would know if I was working or not. Because there was this time one of my colleagues told me that Dominic had come to the cafe when I was not at work and asked to be served by me, so when he was told that I was not working, he told them that he would go to another cafe for his coffee until I was back. Mind you, that time I was in the middle of my exams, so I had to focus on my books. He was such a charmer and a smooth talker. As time passed, I went out with him. He was a very smart man and business-minded, but what I had noticed about him was that he didn't take any *T from anyone and find out later that he was actually a Capricorn. He was smart, business-minded, funny and kind, but he had a very low temper and he was very strict. He always wanted perfection. I had thought they were playing when they say never fool a Capricorn because their revenge is always wrath and cruel. I learned that the hard way. One thing that I can advise people on is that if you are dating a Capricorn while you are a Gemini, just prepared that your relationship will always have very serious ups and downs because a Gemini has their own short temper and Capricorn also, but the Capricorn always wants to have an upper hand. They lead, so as the Gemini you will have to understand that and thread carefully. Because once you do them wrong, you would have poured gas or paraffin on an already blazing devil's fire. Ask me, I know how it's like to date and even get married to a Capricorn while you are a Gemini. So I am talking from experience. Anyway, Dominic was really romantic and loving, he knew how to treat a woman like a queen. So we continued going out, he showered me with so much love and gifts. The way I was falling harder and harder for him every day, I eventually found myself like I was possessive over him or obsessed, I don't know. I would get angry if he was not answering my calls, or he would come to have one of his meetings in a cafe with a woman. Was I being obsessive or possessive over the poor guy? Time passed and we started dating. He had confessed his feelings for me, but I kept turning him down and preferred having only a friendship relationship because I had thought I was not the type of girl he would want to be with. 2. I was afraid of telling him about my job as a stripper and sex worker to get money. I just couldn't tell him what I was doing for a living except for the fact that I was working at a cafe, which he knew since we first met there. I was ashamed of my second job, and on the other hand I had fallen for the guy, but I was doubting myself. After a year of dating, he proposed and we got married. My mother was also okay. Dominic had gotten her some help to take out the addiction of alcohol she had, and he was taking good care of my siblings. I wouldn't have to ask for me. I mean, he was doing enough for me and my family, but one thing I knew was that I didn't know if I loved him deeply or I just loved the benefits he was coming with. I had graduated before we got married, and the guy wanted to start building his own empire, meaning he wanted to have children that would take over when he either retires or passes on. Time passed and I had told myself that I would leave the strip club and at least focus on my new venture business that my husband had helped me start. I had started a marketing business, which was advertising or promoting his architectural business, which grew over time from promoting my husband's business to promoting for bigger companies. I loved the change that was happening, being independent, having to enjoy my own hard-earned money while I knew that my family was well taken care of. It was a breath of fresh air, most especially when you know that your mother had become the person who had always prayed for her to be. As my business was doing well, I had quitted being a stripper and a sex worker. Well, I quitted when I had started dating Dominic for a couple of months. His love, attention and affection couldn't let me continue with the job, so I had to change for him, well, not for him only but also for myself to grow. So when I was working at a strip club, I had gotten regular clients who would just call me to ask for my service in exchange for money, of course. They were very helpful during that time, but when I got into a relationship with Dominic and I had seen that it was getting serious, I had to cut all the deals we had off and delete their contacts because I didn't want to put my first serious relationship in jeopardy. About a couple of months later, I started getting sick so much to a point that even my husband got worried and decided to take me to the doctor because I was losing weight and had no energy to even satisfy my husband's needs as I had to. That sickness was stressing me out because I had thought of the worst, like my husband would cheat or find someone else better, who would fulfill his desires and bear him a child, or he would divorce me because he wouldn't be able to keep up with a sick person. But he stayed around and even took some months off work to take care of me. I would appreciate that till I take my last breath. So the doctor had admitted me, saying my blood level was too low, I was not eating well enough, which was too risky, especially in the condition I was in. My husband was confused about the condition the doctor was talking about, so was I. So he furthered his explanation by telling us that we were pregnant. Well, I was pregnant. I was happy, but my husband was happier, and I loved seeing him so happy. Since then he started being fussy over me, making sure I was eating well and I was taking care of myself, but he was overdoing it, though I couldn't complain. I had a good support system that my husband was giving me. Not to mention the love he showered me with, it was breathtakingly refreshing. I don't really know what had gone wrong with him like that. I guess it was selfishness and greed, I don't know. As much as our intimate moments were on the level that satisfied me, but he loved me, and I should have embraced that. And what did I do? I betrayed him in a most painful and cruel way. A year later I had given birth to a very cute and beautiful baby girl. Was I not happy? I was ecstatic, but I couldn't say the same with my husband because he had wanted and hoped for a boy. So a year after our daughter was born, he became distant, going to work earlier than he used to and coming back late. Our marriage was no longer the same, and it was breaking my heart because he was very much in love and supportive during the whole pregnancy journey, but when the child was born, he stuck around for 6 months, then he started his acts. The more Dominic was acting offish and absent to our daughter and I, the more I kept having thoughts about him. He was no longer the loving, romantic, kind and caring husband that I had married. Wasn't he the one who had been pestering me about starting our own family, building his empire and all that? But when the baby was born, he changed. And he changed for the worst. Mind you, the child looked so much like him, but that didn't give him any motivation to show some love and kindness to his child. He was treating me like I was cheating on him or I had cheated on him. Time passed and I saw no change in Dominic's behavior, but it was getting worse each day. I couldn't take it anymore. It was tearing me apart because I didn't know what his problem was, and if I tried to communicate with him about it, he would say there was no problem and he loved our daughter. His words were saying something else while his actions were saying another thing, so what he was saying versus what he was doing was not colliding even a little. So I took my child to my mother's house. I was glad that my mother had fully recovered from her alcohol addiction and he had become a mother we had always wished for, to me and my siblings, and he showed so much love to my daughter, which was another thing I was grateful for. So I left my baby girl for a full 2 months telling my mother that I wanted to fix my marriage with Dominic and plead with him to accept that he had a chance to have a child even if she wasn't what he had expected, but she was still his child, his blood and semen. During my efforts to fix our marriage, the man of the house didn't seem to change. Yes, he would tell me that he loved me, but what about our daughter? What he was doing to me and our daughter was slowly finishing the love I had for him. What is love exactly if you are not showing it, but keep saying it like it's a chorus in your favorite song? How can a person say they love you, but they can't love their own seed? It was really confusing and heartbreaking because if I were to choose between my husband and our daughter, I would definitely choose our daughter because his love that he said he had for us was not enough. In fact, it was just lousy and useless words because his actions were saying a different thing. One day he had invited his friends for a braai to celebrate his success in getting a client in Africa. I was proud of him and his achievements. I won't lie, he had worked very hard to get that contract and he eventually did through his hard work and dedication. So as the good wife that I was, I helped him prepare for the braai that he was hosting. He had asked me to help him because he first wanted to celebrate with his friends, then invite the family later on when the contract was confirmed and signed. I helped him with everything that he needed. My daughter was still with my mother at that time. So when his friends came, I didn't know all of his friends, I only knew a few. I got the shock of my life. 2 of his friends were my clients back then when I was working at a strip club. One of them used to ask me for my intimate service and the other would come to the strip club for the dance only. I just couldn't believe how small the world was and I got uncomfortable at the fact that they might tell my husband about my past with them. Another thing I wouldn't know is that they were my husband's friends because they were not at our wedding celebration. Worst part was that both of them had asked for my service 2 weeks before my wedding with Dominic. They had asked me on different days and I wouldn't have guessed that they were somehow friends. Yes, I am not proud of what I had done to my husband because he had shown me nothing but true love and the guys had promised to give me good money and they wanted a good service before they would go on a business trip. That was what they told me. If I knew that they were my husband's friends, I wouldn't have agreed to commit adultery 2 weeks before I got married. Throughout the whole celebration I was so uncomfortable. The lusting eyes that the guys were giving made me more uncomfortable. I didn't know how these guys would act when they got drunk because they were drinking like it was their last time or what they would tell Dominic. You know how some guys are. And according to what I had seen, it looked like the whole squad knew that the 2 guys were womanizers. The other one liked going to strip clubs while the other one loved sex. So it was scary. I was not even myself, but luckily no one noticed. About a month later, I received a call from Tom, one of Dominic's friends, the one who loved sex. I was surprised because he hadn't called me ever since the day we last saw each other before my wedding. He asked me to meet him at a certain hotel for a quick one, of which I bluntly refused and reminded him that I was no longer into that life and I was happily married. I said that to get him off my back and hoped that maybe he would get the message even though I was not really happy. It had been quite some time since things had been tense in my matrimonial house. My husband was acting fishy, like there was something he was hiding from me. At first I had thought it was work pressure, but things got worse. He was suddenly moody, his sex drive was no longer the same. As much as he acted like he didn't love our daughter or even try to play with her, that was a small thing compared to how he was acting towards me alone. So Tom just laughed at me when I told him that I was happily married, and he told me that if I was happily married, I would have acted like a happy person when they had come to Dominic's celebratory braai. I first didn't understand what he was trying to imply, but I somehow remembered that he was the only client that knew me at my happiest or when I was pretending to be happy. He told me to know my worth and if the battle that I was trying to win with Dominic was worth it, and how long would I keep fighting for something and someone who couldn't even steal a glance at me when they were in my house. What he was saying was true, but I couldn't give him that satisfaction just because my husband had changed on me. I still had faith that he would be back to be the person he was when we first started dating. My marketing company on the other side was doing well. It was the best distraction I had. Time passed, I decided to start going out, to live a little, I had never got time to all that and enjoy my money because I had to think of the situation that I was facing at home. So I started by going to the mall to do some shopping, hoping that it would cheer me up, just like all the girls who say shopping was a great therapy, but for me it wasn't, I won't lie. My husband knew that I was the lover of affection and intimacy, but the way he was acting made me somehow feel frustrated and in so much desire for intimacy. Though I didn't want to do that to my husband because it was going to jeopardize my marriage, I couldn't hold myself anymore, to the point that I would sometimes help myself. So when I went shopping, I bought a lot of lingerie, hoping that they would bring at least a small spark to my husband's eyes when he sees me wearing a sexy number. So when I got home, I prepared his favorite dish. Luckily, I had gotten my daughter a nanny because of work, and I was kind of tired of burdening my mother with my problems. My husband came back earlier than expected that day. The nanny and my daughter were at my mother's house, so I tried acting like a good wife and welcomed my husband with a kiss and asked him to go take a quick shower because we needed to talk. Luckily, he complied and did as instructed. While I was left to finish up everything, I made sure to wear something sexy that would make him want to eat me in an instant. When he came back from taking a shower, he came down the stairs and asked what the occasion was and where I was going, since I was wearing a dress that he had not seen before. I told him that I had wanted to spend quality time with him and tried addressing the issue that we were facing in our marriage. But the guy just dismissed my concerns and changed the topic. I asked him to at least notice me as his wife. I then tried seducing him, but he was not having it. He complained about being tired, and what surprised me that day was that he asked where Chrissy, our daughter, was. I knew he didn't ask that because he wanted to ask, but it was because he wanted to dismiss what I was trying to do and address it with him. So I told him that our daughter was at my mother's house. He just took the car keys and told me that a child shouldn't be separated from their mother because that would break the connection and the bond we had, so he was going to fetch her. I didn't really understand the sudden love he had for our daughter, but somehow my heart was happy and at ease to see him considering our daughter's feelings. I had hopes that maybe we would get through everything, but who was I fooling? He left me there with a lingerie on. He didn't even try to at least compliment or show me some affection. He just remembered that he had a daughter that he had been absent with for a year. My heart was broken and I was so thirsty and hungry for some intimacy, so I found myself calling Tom with the hope that he was available. Luckily, he had invited me to their private party because I had told him that I was bored and I needed some company. I didn't even waste any time. I just changed only the dress that I was wearing, then went to the location that Tom had sent. I didn't care if my husband would come back home and not find me. All I was thinking about was the salt and desire for affection that I had been craving for. When I got there, Tom welcomed me and introduced me as his fun girl. Which came as a huge shock to me because I didn't remember forming any fun relationship with Tom, but I dismissed that, but maybe we did have a fun relationship which happened a long time ago. So the night went on, and at that party, I noticed a few of Dominic's friends. Someone suggested that we all play spin the bottle, where one would either kiss the person the bottle would be pointed to or you would have a shot of vodka. That game was fun and all. I had kissed 3 of Dominic's friends including Tom. As the game was getting heated, someone changed it and told us to play truth or dare. I tried containing myself by choosing truths, but Tom asked if I was truly happy and sexually satisfied in my marriage. That question caught me by surprise because I didn't know how to answer, and I couldn't lie because they would see that I was lying. I was getting uncomfortable, so I changed the answer I had given them and chose dare. Tom then dared me to go to one of the rooms in the house with a guy called Kenny for 15 minutes. He looked like he had been craving for me the whole night. I was resistant at first because I didn't know what I was supposed to do in that room, but I eventually went with the guy. When we got there, the guy started touching me. Mind you, I was also tipsy, so the alcohol was playing its role on my body, so it reacted to his touch and smooth words he kept saying. Within a blink of an eye, I found myself going down with the guy. My mind had flushed down any thoughts of my marriage problems and my husband. I was enjoying the moment. My mind took me back to where and who I was before getting married and having a whole family. Not knowing that the room we were in actually had cameras, I was so caught up in a moment to a point that I didn't notice anything, plus the alcohol was doing its work. The game went on until late and the real fun started when everyone was dancing. I was really sloshed to a point that I found myself dancing like a stripper on top of the table. I did the dance for 3 of the guys, who included Tom, Kenny, and the one that used to come to the strip club for my dance. I was letting loose and cared less. Little did I know that they were actually my husband's friends. Well, I knew the 2, but I didn't know about Kenny. So as I was busy dancing, I told the guys to follow me to the private room. My stripping habits had come back on full mode, and we were all drunk, so I commanded them to follow me to the room and they complied. When we got there, we started our little party. I danced for them and seduced them to a point that Tom and Kenny started touching me, and boom, we were having a threesome. I was enjoying the way that they were touching me and making me feel good. I don't remember where the other guy had gone and I didn't care, so I continued with the fun I was having with 2 of these guys. We did a lot the previous night. We were all sloshed to a point that I couldn't remember everything that had taken place in the private room, though I remembered bits of what had happened. I woke up in the morning with a very serious hangover headache. When I looked at myself, I saw that I was not wearing anything. My heart started beating, thinking of the worst and thinking of how stupid I was for putting my marriage in jeopardy. I had committed adultery, something I had vowed to myself to never do again. I was so scared, thoughts were racing in my head. I couldn't help but feel guilty of what I had done, and there was no undoing it. As I was busy panicking, Tom came into the room with a cup of coffee and painkillers to kill the hangover headache. As much as I wanted to appreciate his kind gesture, my heart and my mind didn't allow me to. It was on its own dimension and a very dark one. I just couldn't stay there anymore, so I only took the painkillers and drank them before rushing home. When I got home, I found my husband busy with his drawings. He was doing a very good job and I was really proud of his accomplishments. I greeted him and he told me that Chrissy was sleeping, in a very cold tone. I knew I was in deep *T because I didn't even notify him about my sudden departure. It was something that came to mind at the last minute. I tried apologizing to him for leaving the house and not tell him where I was going. Instead of saying that maybe it's okay, he just gave me an answer. He was as cold as ice. Weeks later, I had been living in fear and thought that my husband was seeing through me what I had done. I felt like the abomination that I had done was written all over me, and it didn't help with the guilt I was feeling. During those weeks, my husband suddenly decided that he was moving out of the house. When I asked him why he was doing that, he told me that it was for the best, not only for him but for myself also. I didn't understand his lame and lousy excuse, so I fought with him about moving. After the whole begging and throwing tantrums that I did, thinking he would change his mind, the guy continued with his plans and moved out of the house. I knew there and then that my marriage was hanging on a very high and dangerous cliff. You know, when you get that feeling that tells you that everything you had worked hard for was about to go south instead of north side. That was what I had felt, and I couldn't even blame anyone for it. About a week after he had moved out, a delivery guy had come to the house, stating that he had come to deliver the parcel. When I asked who had sent it, he told me what all other delivery guys usually say, "I don't know, ma'am, I am just a delivery guy." My conscience told me that maybe it was something from my business clients. Little did I know that it was actually divorce papers and another paper that stated that Dominic was taking full custody of Chrissy. I thought I was going crazy, like my mind was about to burst like a bomb. I couldn't believe why Dominic would just decide to send me such things. Why couldn't he sit down with me and talk like married and matured parents? But he went there and filed for a divorce plus full custody of the very same daughter he had neglected for a year. I couldn't let him win just like that. If he wanted to go, he should have told me, but not take my daughter. I called our family and asked for an urgent meeting with Dominic because everything was going through our lawyers. Luckily, the week didn't end and the lawyer had confirmed that we would meet in the next 3 days. So when we got there, I asked Dominic why he was divorcing me and why he wanted to take full custody of my child. The answers he gave me were more than enough to make me depressed and think of the worst of myself. He told me that he knew that I had cheated on him with 3 of his friends, and I didn't start there because he also found out that I had cheated again 2 weeks before our wedding day. He furthered by saying that he knew about my past job and that the cafe job was just a front job for me. I didn't understand where he had taken all that information. My mind had thought that maybe Tom might have told him. But I found out that he didn't. Dominic had found all of that by himself, and his trusted friends had told me that I had gone to the private party that they had hosted, and Tom introduced me as his fun girl. I had no comeback when he said, so I opted to just humble myself and apologize, hoping that we would maybe try and work things out for the sake of our daughter. He was not having. He was so furious even the veins were coming through his temple. I had seen Dominic angry, but the way he was angry that time made me scared and regret the things I had done. I know I should have been honest with him from the get-go, but I decided to keep everything to myself, and when the old me got unleashed I couldn't control it. And forgot that I was no longer under the pressure of my family and I was a married woman. But what did I do? I broke the vows that I had made in front of our families, friends and God, and there was nothing I could have done to save my marriage. I tried pleading with Dominic to at least have mercy and not take my daughter away, but the guy just told us that he was done talking and the call he would like to receive would be the call that tells him that I had signed the papers. I couldn't let him win. I couldn't go back to being the person I was before I found Dominic, so I tried fighting for what was mine. During my efforts of trying to fight for my daughter, Dominic did the worst thing possible. He had gone to one of the gossip journalists and told them that he had taken his company out of my marketing company. He would no longer use my company for his business because I was untrustworthy and an unreliable person. He furthered his statement by saying that my marketing company is just a front to get more clients, but my real self was a body seller, a stripper, and a mother to the daughter that I would always take to my mother's place so I would have time to satisfy my clients. I couldn't believe that the guy I had loved and fought so hard for him to notice me as his wife would just go to journalists and tarnish my name just like that. After that I lost so many clients to a point that I didn't even know how and where I would start and pick up the pieces that the person I had once loved had scattered. You know when a person says they were drowning in deep muddy waters. I was that person. I was drowning in muddy water and I couldn't swim. I resorted to finding closure in alcohol. I became what my mother was. At that time I understood why my mother was an alcoholic. My life was down and out. I had lost the only person who showered me with love and care and gave me a very beautiful daughter. Now I had lost that daughter plus something that was so dear in my heart, my company. I was really depressed and wished to just go far away where there were no troubles and sorrows. 6 months later, my mother told me to stop having a pity party because it will not bring back the things that I had lost, including my daughter, but instead it would take me straight to the morgue, and when that happens, I would not be able to fight nor see my daughter ever again. Those words made me think again about life, so I took the money that I had saved from my company and the one I had got when I got divorced and used it to fix myself. I went to the rehabilitation center for 6 months, while attending AA meetings when I was inside. By the time I came out, I was a whole new person. I had discovered what my worth was and what I wanted. I started by asking for at least a joint custody of my daughter, which I got by the grace of God. I made peace with Dominic even though he was still disappointed in me, but we became civil parents for the sake of our daughter. I then started another social media marketing and a non-profit organization for women who were once in my shoes. I am happy with the changes in my life. Everything that happened didn't only break me, but they groomed me to be the better version of myself and be able to help others who are like me. As I have mentioned that I do not need or condone any judgment, I am still ashamed of my past. Please give me guides on how I should have done things. If there is anyone who was once like me, how did you come out of the situation without losing your life partner?